Hi, welcome to Sewing with Sandy. Today we're going to make a slip skirt. We're going to use New Look pattern 6793. We're going to make the short version with a zipper and a facing out of a woven from a satiny woven from Minerva, and that's cut on the bias. So it's going to stretch, and we're going to talk about bias and what you need to do before you sew it up. And then I made the long version without a slit with a stretchy fabric from Joann's and added a little trim on the bottom and put an elastic waist on that. So we're going to talk about that version also. And then I just bought some fabric from Joann's to make a third version because leopard is everywhere and this pattern's perfect. It's a fast pattern, it's quick to make, and you can make it as a woven or a knit. Super simple to put together, and it's so trendy right now, so you don't have to spend a lot of time making it. You know, you put a couple of hours in and you've got this skirt that's very trendy. You know, you're right on the edge of everything that's going on, and you don't have to spend a lot of money or a lot of time putting it together. So, New Look slip skirt. Here we go. All right, we're gonna do this super easy New Look 6793, and I've cut out my pieces. The first thing you wanna pay attention to is cutting your pieces out. So you wanna pay attention to this grain line. This line needs to be parallel to the edge of the fabric. So in this case, it's on the bias. The skirt is cut on the bias, so it's stretchy across the grain as opposed to being straight on the grain. Normally that grain line goes up and down, and we measure from the grain line to the edge of the fabric. So same with this, except now it's crooked. So you need to lay your pieces out flat. Typically this, like on this table, this won't work because it's hanging over the edge. I actually got down on the floor and laid my pieces out and cut them out on the floor. The other thing you want to pay attention to is that you have the tissue right side up, because you don't want it one piece right side up and one piece upside down. There's no mirror imaging going on here. We have a piece for the front and a piece for the back. Now this pattern is made for a woven. I already made one out of a knit and I love it. I'm going to try this one out of a woven. This is a beautiful satin from Minerva. I love the color. The color is right on trend. It's soft and flowy, but there's no give to this whatsoever. Because I cut it on the bias, it's a little stretchy, but it's not a stretch fabric, it's a woven. Now on the instructions here, they have you hang the fabric for 24 hours. And the reason you do this is you want to make sure that your pieces grow because they're cut on the bias. And when something is cut on the bias, it can stretch a little. So we want to make sure that our pieces are plumb and straight when we go to sew them. So the very first thing we're going to do is pin them together and hang them. So I have piece one. I'm going to pin them right sides together, and because my fabric is very similar on both sides, I put a pin up at the top on the right side of the fabric. So I'm going to take piece one and piece two, put them right sides together and pin them across the top. And then I'm going to take a skirt hanger and hang them 24 hours, 48 hours. After you cut them out, just pin them up, pin them together and hang them. And that way, when you're ready to sew them, you can go back and true up all of the edges on your fabric. So we're gonna go ahead and hang this up and let gravity do its thing, and then we'll come back and see how far off they are. Okay, we hung our bias pieces. I hung them for 48 hours, and you can see this one piece here has quite a bit of growth. They're still pinned at the top, right? So I still have them pinned at the top where I had them hanging. And you can get 5-6 inches of growth sometimes depending on the fabric. So what we need to do is we need to make this all the same as the tissue was. And piece one and two, they're actually the same piece. They're the same, they're exactly the same. So I'm going to lay one over match it up at the top. Now my pieces are wider than the tissue because I didn't have the right size for my pattern piece, so I just made it a little wider. But what I want to do is I want to lay this back over the top of my pattern and match it up at the top here. I want to make sure I match up this waistband. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom. And this is just, the growth is just a little bit on this side. It's quite a bit on this side. So I'm going to trim the bottom off so that now it's actually back to the way it should be that it was in the beginning. All right, now that my pieces are all even, I'm going to stitch them right sides together. And I'm going to put an invisible zipper in on the left side. So I will link the tutorial to insert an invisible zipper if you've never done one before, but I'm going to sew up the right side and insert an invisible zipper on the left side. And look at that, our skirt is almost finished. That's what I love about these new look patterns, especially if you're something that's super trendy like these slip skirts. You know, they go up super fast. So they don't have a lot of details, and this slip skirt is made to be simple. So the side seam is sewn. This is very bouncy, this fabric, so I used a Microtex needle, and that helped control any ripples that are gonna go down in that side. And then on the left side, I put in an invisible zip and then sewed the seam all the way down. And now this is a good time to try it on to make sure that it fits. But because the skirt is symmetrical, the front and the back are the same size, you can actually take the seam in a little bit if you need to. So you want to make sure that it fits just the way you would like it before you proceed and put the facing on. And if you do take it in, just make sure you shorten up your facing pieces because these are going on the inside of the skirt. So now we have our front and back facing, and we have the interfacing. This gives the skirt a little bit of structure up at the top. And we're gonna sew these together, right sides together at one end, because this is going to go inside our skirt and finish off the top edge of the skirt. So we're gonna sew the right edges of the facing together to correspond to the right edges of the skirt. I'm going to stitch this one edge, and I'm going to overlock the bottom edge of this. So the shorter, remember the smaller edge, then the curve that goes in is going to attach to the skirt, right? Because the skirt gets wider, so the larger edge is the edge that we want to finish because that's going inside the skirt. Because this fabric shows everything, I would not turn this up and stitch it because you're going to get a ridge there. If you don't have an overlocker, I would use a step zigzag, or if you have an overlocker type stitch on your machine to finish that off. You don't want to add any more thickness than need be here. Super simple. We have our band, it's open-ended. I did finish the edges because that's going to get tucked in. And I also pressed this to one side, and I pressed it to the opposite side of what I have on my side seam. So this is going to go right sides together to the top of our skirt. There is an overlap here on the edge because we're going to finish this edge. So what I like to do is start at the side seam. I'm going to pin the side seam, making sure that I pin my seam allowances down, and then just go around to the edge. Okay, and what you want is you want a little bit of an edge overlapping your zipper. So your zipper, as we look at this zipper tends to flop open. We want to make sure that the tape of the zipper is folded back and that this extends, the facing extends beyond the teeth of the zipper, right? Because what's going to happen is we're going to sew this, and then when we turn this to the inside, we're going to fold this down and get a nice clean seam on the inside. So I'll show you how to do that. But right now I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way around, stitch my facing to my skirt. I'm going to overlock it and press it, and then I'm going to show you how to understitch it and finish it off. Okay, so I stitched the facing to the skirt, and then I overlocked the edges. You can use a zigzag, something to clean it up. Press it flat. Then I'm going to press it away from the skirt. So the seam allowance and the facing are pressed away from the skirt. And I'm going to understitch. I'm going to take the facing and I'm going to stitch it to the seam allowance, really close to the edge, about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. And that helps secure the two of them together. So when I turn it under, I have a really nice crisp edge. Now you can see the understitching on my facing, and what that does when I press this facing down, it gives me this beautiful edge on my waistband. So that takes care of the waistband, except for these two little pieces on the edge by the zipper. So you have this flap here, and what we want to do is fold it under, and you kind of have to fold it at an angle. So this piece is folded back a little bit more than the other piece. And then we want to make sure that our zipper so it looks like that, right? This edge is clean from the outside, and then we're going to hand stitch it down. So this one's done, and you can see I just hand stitched it, and then that way when I close up my zipper, I have a pin in there, but the edge of my facing looks great. Now mine's a little high. I could have probably sewed the seam allowance is a little bit narrower, and normally you would put a hook and eye in there, which I still will do because that will help keep this together and keep the zipper from flying down. But I'll just put this hook and eye in the back. Let's see, there's a hook and a clasp, and I'll just put that towards the back, so that way it helps when you're zipping it up because you can hook it together and then you have two hands. Also, it keeps this closed. The other thing you want to do with the facing is at the seam allowance on the side where we matched up these facings, you want to tack that down. So I've just tacked it to the seam allowance so it's not going anywhere. Okay, so that's pretty simple. This beautiful seam, we're going to talk about the edge foot and how we can get that really nice and neat when we do the hem, which we're going to tackle next. Now, you want to turn the hem under 5/8 of an inch. At this point, you've tried it on a couple of times and should be happy with it, and press it. And you know those rumples you get when you do a narrow hem? Well, there's a couple of ways to avoid them. This is my sleeve ironing board. The first thing you want to do is you want to take your piece and measure this. This is 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to pin this. You can pin, if you use these glass head pins, you can pin right into your ironing board. For this fabric, you need a press cloth. I put the press cloth down and then steam it, and the pins hold it in place because I can't see it with the press cloth. And then when I take it out, my hem is all steamed up, turned up and steamed, so I have a nice little crease there. This is my edge foot. You've seen me use this before. It has this little bar tack that slides underneath your machine in between the feed dogs. There's a little slot there and it fits into that slot. So when you sew the hem or the understitching or something like that, the fabric rides along that bar. So you get this beautiful hem. Look at how pretty that is, right? Right on the edge. That's how you get a beautiful hem. Then you need these. These are applique scissors, duck-billed scissors, and what you're gonna do, they help, this bill helps you from cutting the fabric underneath because you have to be very careful with these. But if you make prom dresses or wedding dresses or anything like that, these are a valuable tool because it's much easier to try to hem this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim off this excess because we don't want this. We want this little tiny baby hem. So we're just going to trim all, it takes a little while. We're going to trim all the way around, and what you're left with is this little tiny edge. And then you can turn it under and stitch it again. And then you have a beautiful edge without ruffling, and it's super tiny and everything is all concealed inside. Now, if you want to stitch it, I stitch this from the top, but if you want to stitch it from the bottom, your bobbin stitch needs to look as good as your top stitch. That is the only criteria. So outside of that, we're done. And I will show you the changes that I made to make this into a knit slip skirt. I really like this pattern. So let's talk about what you need to do to turn this into a knit slip skirt. Our skirt's done. I'm really happy with it. This fabric is very bouncy, so it has a really nice drape and it's very dressy. So we're gonna style it up really dressy, like sequins and ready to go to a party. But I wanted to show you the hem. So we have this super tiny hem. There we go. And you can see on the back, by using that technique, you get a really nice rolled hem without like tons of effort. So this version I made, so this skirt, I made the shorter version. Most of these slip skirts are pretty long, and I thought I would try the shorter version because I did the long version in the knit. So I want to show you that. I took this pattern and made it with this super stretchy, very silky knit fabric. And we're going to style this one up a little bit more casually. But instead of putting a facing on it, so I attached a waistband with 2-inch elastic. And this I think is more practical, and you see more of these in the store because they fit a variety of sizes. And you know, during the holidays, sometimes 5 pounds, one party, and you can need a little expansion. So this tends to fit a little better, I think, instead of the zipper and the waistband. So you get a little bit more flexibility out of this one. I made this one long, but I didn't put a slit in it because if you look at the ones in the stores, you don't see too many of them with slits. Most of them look just like a long slip. And then I added this fun trim to the edge of this one, so I didn't even have to hem it. I just actually stitched the trim on to the bottom. I serged it. I didn't even need to do that because it is very knitty, and it's not very knitty. There you go. Very technical term. We have knitty fabric. It's knit and it's not going to ravel, but I love this one, and we're going to style this one up a little bit more casually. And then because leopard is everywhere, I was at Joann's and I bought this silky semi-stretchy. So I'm going to put an elastic in this one and make the long version again of this, because you're seeing these everywhere, and this fabric was really inexpensive at Joann's. It's a simple pattern. It goes up fast. It's trendy. You're probably not going to see them for more than a season or two. So it's the perfect opportunity. You take a couple of hours, and I don't think this fabric costs more than $25 to stitch it up with a piece of elastic in it, and you'll get a lot of wear out of it, and it will look right on trend. So let's style these up, and then I'm going to cut this one out and finish it. Okay, here's the knit version, dressed down a little bit. Just a denim jacket, a little knit top. Both of those are from Stitch Fix. My favorite, Tom's with the leopard print, and then this really cute knit version. I added a belt. This is a super stretchy belt from Amazon, and then just some jewelry that I had lying around. Old jewelry is getting recycled now because layers and layers of jewelry is back in again. So if you've saved all of your chains, just pile them all on, and you have this really cute, fun look. All right, here we have the shorter satin version. This is certainly more dressy, and you would want to kind of dress it up. I have a sweater. This is from the Silhouette Pattern sweater set. It's a little bit long for this, so I just kind of folded it up underneath. If you had a belt, it would be really cute. This is just this fabric with all of these paillettes on it, but it's stretchy, so it's definitely dressy. And then an old jacket that I have had for a while that is actually back in style. It works with the I've always loved leopard. So you keep things in your closet that you love. Sometimes you can actually use them again down the line. But yeah, I love this version. It's certainly ready for a party.